All right. Welcome to it. We are live. I am Brigantia Blackbird of the Blackbird Grimoire, and I am joined today by Sapphire and Jade, who I had the good fortune to meet via Twitter, Twix, X, whatever permutation of the name we happen to be favoring these days. And we are here to talk about the absolute state of everything because there's been it's just been one event out of the other. And we got to talking a couple weeks ago, Sapphire, you and I, about how it wasn't just any one particular event that just really stood out and required for comment. It was just the fact that it's just the endless series of everything. So, everyone, today we're going to be broadly discussing media issues, immigration, how politics has been replacing religion and how it's having its own holy wars, the deliberate undermining of the family, and the effort to destroy independent thought. And these topics I really think are all interrelated. So, we will be tackling them just in whatever order we happen to feel like. And we are joined today also by Violence is Life. Good morning to you, darling. Glad to have you here. And hello to Brandy Young, who is also with us. And gals, I'll be checking into the comments every so often. So feel free to jump in and be part of the conversation. So, Sapphire, you approached me first a couple weeks ago, right after the attempt on Trump's life. So, where would you like to begin? Because I feel like all of this came about because you really wanted to say something about all of this.
I think it right now in general, that event alone, it kind of rocked the whole world. And it really started my process of thinking, we're going downhill and we're going downhill fast. There was a lot of misinformation around the media and what was going on, and it was coming out so quickly that it was really difficult to get the actual facts as to what was happening, what had happened. Did they know this guy was on the roof? Didn't they know this guy was on the roof? And then you start seeing the comments that really, I don't condone violence in any which way, shape, or form. If it had been Biden, I wouldn't condone violence in any way, shape, or form. I don't believe violence belongs in politics. But seeing the people say, oh, they missed, that's so sad, I was like, this is not okay. We are wishing death on somebody that is a father, a grandfather, an ex-president. And it wouldn't be okay if it was done to Biden. It wouldn't be okay if it was done to Harris, or in our side of the pond up here in Canada, it wouldn't be okay if it was done to Trudeau or Polyev or Jagmeet. And it was really starting to pull on my heartstrings that this is what the world is coming to. It's wishing for violence, which is wishing
The
for
moment.
war.
Please bear with us. Alrighty. Come on, machine, bring us back. Okay, we are back. Again, apologies, everyone. We're all having internet issues today. I would just like to remind everyone Mercury retrograde is right around the corner, and apparently the machines are feeling the effects. So, again, please just bear with us. And Jade, where's kind of the center of your concern? Because you came to me along with Sapphire about a week ago saying, yeah, things aren't cool. So, what has been your whole thought process?
My thought process is, where are our heads right now that we're not able to see outside our own perspectives and come together to create solutions to the problems that are out there, like the violence, the protesting. There are solutions to these problems that, if instead of hating people for the sake of them being different and having different ideals than you, we came together to go, okay, you know, these are the problems, but we as people can come together and solve them. We can have a solution. It doesn't matter if we see eye to eye on every single thing. There's never going to be an end if we don't try.
Yeah, that's very true.
And like Sapphire said, if you're going to incite
absolutely
violence,
agreed.
then it is going to end violently.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing I think about is that there is some natural overlap of value systems amongst peoples, religions, cultures that are inherently compatible with each other. And if we were looking at that, it would really absolutely change the game around. We would be in a very different place. So I think all three of us have a lot of bitching to do about the media in general. All of our countries, the media is not exactly telling the truth, at least the legacy media. And I know in America, the only people who are still paying attention to MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, those are people who are either fixated on the left, and the left is all they can see and it's all they will hear about, or they're parents of my in law's generation. They watch the corporate news because that's what they think is credible. Anyone my age or younger, zero use for it. It's independence all the way. What is it like in Canada? Because I know you guys were telling me you don't even have access to the same information other people do.
So on our end of things, when it comes to
much of that was cut out.
On our end of things, there's certain things you can't research on Facebook. So if I'm interested in what's going on in the States, if I type in Fox News, I can't view a Fox News page. I have to go through internet searches. A lot of the times, unfortunately, you're scrolling through TikTok to even try to get some relevant information. But then you're running into the algorithm problem, because you like one thing about Trump, then everything's going to come up Trump. I like one thing about Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre, that's all that's going to start coming up on my algorithm. So we're running into the issue of getting accurate information as to what's going on. And as you said, our generation is very social media based for getting our information. We don't watch the news. A lot of people don't have cable anymore or even care to have cable. So it makes it very difficult to get that accurate information as to what's actually going on in the world.
Has that been your experience as well, Jade?
It has been my experience, but also we do have a independent news here called Rebel News. And I've seen on more than one occasion Canadian politicians straight refusing to even interact with them. Just, I'm not answering, your questions aren't valid, things like this, just shutting it down altogether because it doesn't, I guess it doesn't push their narrative. It doesn't spin them in the light that they see. It's just straight question and answer. It's not a big political show for them. Therefore, it's not worth their time.
As you bring up the politicians, I'm curious about what's going on in Canada and how you might perceive things in the United States. Because in the United States, we have this concept of the uniparty. I mean, yes, outwardly we have, Republicans and Democrats, and they're the mainstream things. However, they are increasingly disconnected from people, and there are factions within both party that essentially share the same vision, the same view. They're just pandering to different crowds, but ultimately they're not representing anyone's interest except what they perceive to be their own. Is Canada experiencing anything like that?
Definitely. I myself I always considered myself left liberal. And with the extremist community within the left liberal faction, I now consider myself more to the middle between conservative and liberal, which is not something I ever thought I would have to reconsider. So absolutely, we are going through that. Within even those parties themselves, there's people that are fighting within each other. They're fighting against the conservatives as well. There seems to be no middle ground of we actually need to get things done. It's pointing fingers, naming names. It's his fault. It's her fault. It's nobody's standing up to say, I've got the solution. I'll fix it.
Yeah. Or at the very least, I have a few ideas, and I think if we just try them, things might suck less. I mean, isn't it kind of sad that, because it's not just the United States or Canada. I mean, our cousins in the UK, they're going through the exact same thing. I mean, all they're really looking is for someone to say, I have some practical ideas. And they don't have to be this politically charged thing. If we just focused on practical steps, we might be better off. And just there's so little appetite amongst that in the political classes. What kind of trouble do you think is ultimately brewing as that disconnect grows? Because I'm not seeing that disconnect shrink amongst traditional partyists.
On our end of things, a good point that my husband made was we are swinging a pendulum and it's going from one end to the other, and there's nothing in the middle. And we had a fantastic high school teacher who once said, if we're debating, I have to let you be defeated honorably. Because if I degrade you and I push you down, it's going to turn into a yelling match. It's going to turn into hatred. It's going to turn into my side versus your side and no solution in the middle. And that's what we're seeing constantly within our parliament is two sides of the party that are more concerned about using the terms wacko or calling each other names or calling each other down. They're not coming up with actual solutions to the problem. We have an immigration crisis. We have a homelessness crisis. We have an economic crisis where Canadians are losing out on jobs. We are sitting back and watching our tax dollars yell back and forth at each other. And we're sitting here in the middle of the pendulum being like, we're drowning as Canadians. Could somebody please say something worthwhile, a solution? Like, just take a step in the right direction versus yelling hatred at each other.
Yeah, that's a good question about why does it seem so many of these governments actively dislike their own people?
Yeah, like you all have the same job. Why is it you can't come together and say, okay, I don't agree with you. You don't have to agree with me, but we can agree that this doesn't work. And together, we are the people who have the power to make the change. Yet they're not. They're not able to look past their own ideals to go, Canadians or Americans come first, not their beliefs, not their party's beliefs. And if they don't decide to do that soon, they're going to find themselves without voters.
Yeah, without voters. And honestly, when people have their confidence shaken in its institutions to this degree, those institutions start to crumble and we have historical precedent. And no, YouTube, I'm not calling for that to happen. Don't be such a whiny bitch, YouTube. But I mean, and there is a perception that they don't like their own people. They view it as us as very replaceable. And in fact, that's what a lot of people are starting to argue with the immigration issue specifically. They don't want to be responsive to the citizens who have lived there, a lot of them born there, some of them many generations. I mean, even the United States and Canada, I mean, we're relatively young nations, but you have families who've been in these lands who immigrated here 400 years ago, and some places even further back than that. So, we're kind of rooted here, and the fact that that our politicians, they don't want to deal with us. They're like, I'll take that person who arrived 5 minutes ago, who knows nothing of our history, nothing of how the system is supposed to work. I'll just promise them goodies and have them vote for me, and I'll be in power forever. I just don't see how that slap in the face can just go on indefinitely.
And we're seeing that with what just happened in the UK when politicians don't step in, because between misinformation and anger, we seen what happened in, I believe it was Southport, when those innocent lives were taken and the destruction that was caused. And it started with misinformation. And then again, on our end, we don't see the full story, but what we did see was the riots that ended up taking place and the families that were in their homes and scared. So much could have been done to stop that from happening. And I don't want to see that happen here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, none of us do. And part of the issue with that is the fact that policing wasn't even handed. I mean, it's very, their politicians are always ready to forgive any rioting and bad behavior of the native population. But if someone has immigrated, or they're second generation, or they have the religion that must never be criticized, they never want to police that, or they'll make excuses for why they don't police that. I mean, and I'm like, there's no way anyone is this stupid and this incompetent, and they don't realize that actively creates antipathy. It prevents people from from integration, people from having a meeting of the minds, people from being able to just tolerate each other as they pass through the street. I mean, everything the politicians have done, I think, not only made that situation in Southport worse, I think it actively created the circumstances where it was likely to happen.
Yes.
Let's see. Another thing that I would really love for us to touch on, because again, I think we're going to be going back and forth on all of our topics, is about how politics seems to be replacing religion and a lot of people's souls, and I think that's why essentially we're having a lot of these hardliners, extremists, my way or the highway kind of thing. It's because this is their whole war. This is, their vision of government or how they think the world should be is essentially their God, and they're going to go fight everyone else who is not worshiping their particular God or their version of that God. That is just status quo. That is currently where things are in the States. Is Canada ahead of us on this curve, behind, walking at the same pace? Where are you guys at?
I would say we're probably at about the same pace from what I've researched and what I've seen. There's been a lot more protesting, even where we are, and I know it's all across Canada. There's vandalism. There's in the name of this war, in the name of religion. And
Mhm.
while I sympathize and understand that there are things going on that are not right, that shouldn't be happening, and we wouldn't want them to happen here, which is why people are free to come here. But it's being brought to our doorsteps, which is also unfair. I mean, we want everybody to come here and be safe and included. So protesting these things in the way that they are, I mean, you can say they're peaceful, but when you're tearing up flags and you're calling for
Yeah,
people to be injured and you're calling
yeah.
for violence, that's not peaceful.
No, I mean, by definition, it's not peaceful. And what one of the things that really weighs on me is that within paganism, whether we're talking the Norse, the Germanics, Celts, the Greeks, the Romans, whoever it is, there is such a strong tradition of hospitality, and I think, kind of our default option. Of course, we want to be welcoming and hospitable, and we do, but there's the other side of the equation, is that it's not enough to be a good guest, good host. People have to be good guests, and I feel that we're just being constantly taken advantage of and told, him like, well, you should just take the abuse, you should just tolerate it.
With that, one of the things that my husband and I talk about frequently is the generation of Canadians that are coming up and how entitled they are and how soft they are.
Yeah.
And they are that way because of things like social media, instant gratification. It's got to come, it's got to
Yeah.
come fast. And then you have these people who have fought so hard and have struggled and had to change to save their lives, their families' lives. They've had to adapt and overcome, and they come into our country to feel safe and to feel welcomed. But they are going to continue to feel like they have to fight for their way of life. And I want to welcome those people in so they can feel safe. But I also want to invite them to a stronger Canadian way of life. Because in the end, we are Canadian and you are coming to Canada. You don't have to fight anymore. You can have your religion, you can have your values, but you cannot expect us as Canada to change our heritage. And speaking on this, we are on Mi'kmaq territory. My ancestors came in and probably did despicable things to the natives that were on this land. And it was a terrible, terrible time, but I respect that we are on Mi'kmaq territory and that us ourselves are immigrants. It's such a wide-ranged conversation when we're talking about immigration and heritage, especially here in Canada.
Well, and it's a similar issue in the United States. And one thing that I've brought up, and people I don't get a good reception when I bring this up. I'll say, war and conquest and taking people's territory and all this. And I mean, this has been common in every human civilization. So my question to people is, why is it suddenly so uniquely evil? Because it happened to be the tribes that were here in America, who also were not the first. They had their own coming over as well. And I said, why is it so much worse if someone from Europe ended up doing that as opposed to one of the tribes doing that to each other? And that's usually when people start blocking me on Twitter. When I bring that up.
Oh, just one sec. Lost a little bit there. Okay. I'm back.
Okay. Well, my main thing is that, I don't really see why. Okay. I don't really see that it would be morally worse for someone, who came from a different continent or has a different skin color, religion, them doing conquest as opposed to someone who is here doing conquest to each other. I'm like, the issue is conquest. The issue is humans not getting along. And, and that happened, which is, that's something that doesn't make me very popular on Twitter. Just because I don't know. It's not a line of thought that I tend to entertain amongst people for very long, because I think that any evil that occurs, it is evil that's occurring on the same moral level.
Yes,
and you're correct. That's a good point, and it makes me think of going back to a different pagan belief system, the Aztecs and the Incas. They had, when they would come to times where they found they had little and they were getting upset and angry and this tribe had more than they did, or what, they would do something that's called a flowery death, where they would send some warriors in, go to a field, fight to the death, and you get to reap whatever they brought. So we understand that there's coming to this tumultuous end. Instead of having it affect our main cities, our capitals, and our people, let's take it somewhere where we can do it in a peaceful way, that we still get what we need and what we want from each other. We just don't do senseless killing in the name of it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there is something to be said for having that that kind of approach of, at the very least, keeping conflict, away from the women and children. It would be very different in warfare if we still managed that. But I mean, the way it's conducted, I mean, no matter what war we're talking about, I mean, it almost seems like it's the desired effect to have that happen. But I don't want us to stray too far into, the war side of things going on in the world when we have so many domestic concerns. And one of the big foundational issues that you brought up, Sapphire, was just all the efforts to destroy the family, and presumably people are wanting to replace it with social services, as if some government bureaucrat is going to be more invested in your health and happiness than your own flesh and blood. But it strikes me as being very akin to people being very suspicious of all things that are natural. There are so many natural remedies that I think should be scientifically explored and quantified, and so we know what we're doing with them. But instead, there's this emphasis, well, we made this in a lab, and because we did it in a lab and we've got nice name tags, that's totally better. And people are saying that's not necessarily the case. And there's so much hostility to that. So I can't, in my brain, separate this idea of the hostility to the family being intrinsic also to a hostility to the natural order.
So one of the biggest things when you and I were talking about that kept flashing in my mind is, the school system and social media and the narrative that these kids are being fed. And I am not pro keeping secrets from parents, which is something that seems to be being pushed a little bit within our school system sometimes when it comes to certain clubs and communities around that. Jade and I are very familiar. I was working an afternoon. This was a couple of years ago, and our two oldest children came home and blindsided Jade with the quote, "Did you know we're born without gender?" And poor Jade was left to parent that and be like, okay, like, what were you told? And after a very long discussion, and Jade, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's not necessarily what was taught, it was how it was taught and how those kids walked away misunderstanding the information that was given to them.
Well, and also with a subject like that, I think there's also an issue of overstepping. Yeah. I mean, any conversations like that seems like that should be determined by the parents and their discretion and their instruction. Just the fact that the schools feel so free to discuss these things of not only gender identity issues but also sexuality issues. And I'm thinking, they're five, colors and shapes. Can we do that first? ABCs.
Yeah. We can't have spelling tests, but we can talk about which gender you are or aren't born.
Religion and sexual orientation and all those things, that stuff needs to be left out of the public school system, and it needs to be given to the parents. I 1000%
agree.
I'm not saying there shouldn't be safe spaces for kids to go that feel like maybe they are feeling a certain way and cannot talk to their parents. But this is where it comes back to extreme right, extreme left, and what needs to be found in the middle that appeases everybody in the situation. And you're not always going to be able to appease everybody, but you can appease the majority. Oh, I'm lost again.
Let's see if she comes back.
I'm lost again. Gotta find me.
There you are. We lost you right about when you were talking about finding things in the middle. That's where you were. So if you'd like to finish your thought.
I'm not sure which part of the middle I was at, but I'll just bring it back. You got the far right, you got the far left. There has to be a meeting of the minds in the middle that can appease everyone, and if not everyone, there is a way to appease the majority. And it's up to me to teach, and I have 2 sons. It's up to me to teach my sons to be strong, to research, to question everything. Bring your salt to school, kids. Question everything you're told. You cannot rely on all the adults in your life to give you the right answers and the truthful answers. You have to be able to think for yourselves. And that's what we're missing in this generation. It's the scrolling on the TikTok, scrolling down Facebook. Oh, this is what is said. This is fact. Oh, this person said this. This is fact. Oh, this comment that this person made. This is fact. It's like, no, it's not necessarily fact. You have to be able to think for yourself. And we're raising kids not to do that anymore.
Which, kudos to you for making that effort. I hope many more parents follow your example. There's also a huge issue in the United States because some of the backlash to the woke stuff that goes beyond reason, beyond what any reasonable person would think would be appropriate in schools. The knee-jerk reaction on that of, I don't want to say the right, because I think that it's less about them being politically right than it is as their perception as being Christians. And they're wanting, Christianity actively taught in schools and all this and that, and, public schools. And I'm like, you need to back that up. If you want to do, your private schools, that's your right. In fact, I would applaud you if you did that because, one of the parents' responsibilities, no matter what religion they are, is to convey their values to their children. And so if you want to do that through private school, through homeschooling, through, we've been engineering pod schools where different parents come together and collectively teach different subjects, or they come together and they hire a particular teacher to teach their children. Whatever you want to do in that context at your own expense, you can exercise your own discernment and judgment. But I said, this is just as wrong as someone saying, today, kindergartners, we're going to talk about gender reassignment surgery, and we're going to talk about sex toys. Won't that be exciting, children? I mean, that it is the equal amount of inappropriate. And again, that's one of my little opinions on X that I frequently get castigated on from the Christians. And I'm like, I am trying to stand up for your parental rights, but you cannot think the solution is to impose your religion.
Yeah, you can't say no to somebody else and then be like, okay, but you have to do it my way, because my way is the better way. Because that's when you get this whole left versus right, because one side pushes too far from where, I don't want to say where they should be, but from where
a recognizable point
levels, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, I grew up in a very much, we celebrated Christmas, and if you didn't believe in that, you left the classroom. But my children are being raised pagan, so I mean, they're being told they're going to hell. Their beliefs aren't real. They're being told all of these negative things by kids, not just Christian kids, kids of other belief systems and religions as well. So I think you're right. It all needs to stay out of schools, because you're confusing kids and you're pitting them against each other at a young age for absolutely no reason.
And we really experienced that here. You know, especially my youngest son and Jade, your son. They are they're very much pagan, and they have hearts of Thor and Odin, and they're excited to talk about it. And when other kids are talking about their religion and their holidays, and our sons are like, oh, this is what we're celebrating, or hey, we got a sabbat coming up, instantly it's you're going to hell, or you believe in a Marvel movie. And then I know, Jade, you've had this, your son reacts
a lot,
and then
he's very upset.
It's our children that tend to get in trouble if they react in a poor manner, but they're not teaching these kids communication either. And this slightly goes off topic, but it goes back to our children at this age are 10. They're COVID kids. They were isolated for so long with nothing but parents and internet. So they do have a very difficult time communicating, as do other kids. And they don't know how to communicate their problems without using aggressive language or, unfortunately, physical violence. And between Jade and I, we're trying to work with our sons to give them the tools that they need to use their words and to walk away from these situations. But it's also very difficult.
We lost her.
I'm lost again.
There she goes. You're working hard to give your kids.
We're working really hard to give them the tools to walk away or to use good words and kind words. But it's very hard when it's thrown at them so much.
Yeah, for sure. And especially at such tender ages. I mean, their personalities are forming, you know, how they're going to view the rest of the world. I mean, that's still very much in flux at that age. I mean, and to encounter such hostility, it is a uniquely difficult thing. And it's all the more galling because, and this is another thing that gets me in trouble with people too, because if you peel back the Abrahamic religions, you still have an entire continent worth of history and traditions and culture and gods and customs. So I'm looking at, like, we represent kind of that inheritor of that old world and of everything that comes with it. And people try to pretend like we're not representing, you know, the soil from which Western civilization grew, and this idea that that they could possibly do without us. You know, it's just bonkers to me. They talk about cut flower culture. You tried that, and thank the gods you didn't succeed as much as you tried, because otherwise, I mean, can you imagine the instability? And that's one thing that I think a lot of these Middle Eastern religious traditions are failing to understand about why there's constantly controversy surrounding them in the Western world. I'm like, because you're transplants, because you tried to get rid of what was ahead of you. You said we were weeds, and you tried to get rid of us, and now you're running out of energy on your own religious ideas. I mean, I understand why this is happening to you. Are you ready to talk about that? No?
They're never ready to talk about it.
On this topic, Violence is Life saying, Christians in Discord keep telling me to convert, and I keep saying no and posting facts. Well, in here, I'd really like to get your thoughts on this, Jade and Sapphire, because I don't think that people's clinging to whether it's Christianity or Islam, Judaism, or any of those. Well, I don't want to include Judaism in this because they're not proselytizing religions. But for proselytizing religions, I think they very much struggle. And I don't think that their beliefs have much to do with facts and historical proof. I think it has more so to do with their emotional attachment to this idea and what it means to them in their hearts. And I think that's why there's so much resistance to facts that don't favor them. But what are your guys' opinions? Because I could be completely misreading the situation.
Oh, no, I would say Christianity especially. I mean, I am pagan, but I understand the teachings of Jesus and that he wanted everybody to get along, love each other, and be good and kind. And I think a lot of Christians, when they come at us with this hate, you're so wrong for what you believe, don't fully understand what his teachings were. They read the words of the Bible, they take them verbatim, they don't stop to think about what they actually mean, and then they throw them at us without fact checking or doing any research on even us. Because like I said, I know the teachings of Jesus. I understand them. I mean, Sapphire understands them somewhat better than I do, probably a lot better than I do. But at least I've educated myself enough to stand and speak to it. And I'm not just throwing back at you, well, I'm going to hell. Great. It's my version. I'll be fine there. Don't worry about me. Like, and that's what I tend to come back with. Like, yeah, it's only one L and she's good. We're cool. But you're right. It comes from a lack of information on their own part and just pure hatred from this is what I believe. And if you don't believe it, then from what I know, you're going to hell because you're a bad person.
What about you, Sapphire? What do you think?
Okay, starting out, I'm just going to say it. I was Catholic for 28 years or more. I actually started Anglican and converted to Catholic. So I was raised in a Christian church. I've taken theology studies on Catholicism. I have a very deep-rooted understanding in that. And I walked away. I don't think I've ever met a true Christian in my life. You have to understand that the teachings of Jesus Christ was to love one another. And you look at some of the ideals that they put forward to force their religion in people's faces and yell and scream that they're right, we're wrong. Jesus came to save the world, condemn sinners. You're a sinner because you don't believe in Jesus Christ. It's like, that's not what Jesus said. Jesus didn't say that I was a sinner. Jesus said to love one another. And you see that meme that goes around all the time. And it's like, well, what if they're gay? What if they're pagan? What if they believe in Allah? What if
I know the meme she's talking about, but she cut out on me.
And it's like, but it's Jesus saying, did I stutter? Just like the live did. Did I stutter?
Yeah.
It's like a loving God. He's supposed to be this loving God and he's the Son of God. And you're telling me he's going to condemn me to hell because I lived my life in a peaceful manner, that I lived my life honoring nature, honoring my brothers and sisters, building a community of love and light. I'm going to hell for that because I don't believe in your values.
I mean, a deity who would condemn someone to eternal torment for that is probably not a deity that would be worth worshiping. I mean, that's just kind of where I personally would fall down on that. And I wonder, and I know we're kind of going far afield with this, but I wonder if part of the issue is the mindset of, they look at the Bible or whatever their preferred text is, and they say, this text has the answers. Whereas for us, so many of us are more so, here are the stories. How many different lessons can I take from them? Now, we're not perfect, obviously. We can get heated in our views. However, I mean, there's so much texture. There's so many different layers. There's so many different ways we could be taking its stories and different ways to analyze it, that I wonder if that is just a part of the problem, to where we're seeing what's written as this is where we start. And then we go from there, where someone says, this is what's written down. This is where we end.
I agree. I think it would be beneficial for everybody to take that small step back and reevaluate and be like, where do we start? Like, let's talk about where do we start now as a community? I have friends that are Christian. I'm married to a Christian Catholic. It's a respect.
And you trust him with you trust him with matches. I just want to toss that out to everybody. You are not in fear. He's going to get a notion in his head.
No, I mean, he's fantastic and he's so open-minded. And Jade, he's participated in our sabbats. We always try to include a little bit of Jesus when we can for him, because we feel like it's important to respect the fact that he's standing there with us. And if the boys wanted to go to church, they are more than welcome to go to church with their dad. We got to take a step back and let everybody reevaluate, make those decisions, and treat one another with respect. As long as nobody's hurting anybody, why aren't we letting them reevaluate now? Why does it have to be, this is what's right, you're wrong, that's it. This is the end of it.
I like what you really said about, coming together about where we are now, because we do have legitimate common concerns. All of us would like to be able to afford groceries and gas and rent or mortgages. I think we're all pretty unanimous that we would like to be able to afford to live again. I think, all of us want to be able to walk down the streets, exist in our societies without having to constantly be on a guard against physical aggression for whatever reason someone takes into their heads, whether they're mentally unstable or they have a religious zealotry motivation or it's political motivation or whatever it is. None of us want to deal with that. And, the other thing is just to be able to refocus upon things that matter, because I think, as dire as the political situation is for everyone, people have to pay attention. But also, I think that it's really unhealthy that we have to devote so much time to paying attention to what's being done to us. And I think on those three things, I think a lot of people could say, you know what, we have a common interest here. We need to get some things off our backs.
Absolutely.
Well, what's agitating about that is the politicians see that and they take it and they put it as part of their platform. Whereas you've had how many years up until before the elections to fix these problems? And now you're going, oh, okay, we see the problem. I have a solution. There's a particular one here in Canada that I've seen, Jagmeet Singh. He made a commercial, why are food prices so high? Why has nobody done anything about this? I'm going to stand up and do something about it. And I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, there's probably a lot of people going, good for you. Congratulations. I'm sitting there going, where was this idea 4 years ago, man? Where was it 6 years ago?
Right.
Where was it before this came? Where was it during COVID? Where was it after COVID?
Right.
Why are you just waiting to get votes? Why does it have to be about the votes? Why, if you had made it about the people, you're more likely to get my vote now than if you're going, hey, you know what? I've got a solution. Because it's just a look over here, pick me maneuver. It's not, it's a Band-Aid that he's got. He doesn't have a solution. He's just trying to get votes.
I mean, doesn't that just perfectly illustrate that hideous combination of laziness and stupidity and evil? I mean, this unholy trinity of those things, and the politicians give it to us every single day.
And like I said, if you have all of these great ideas, why are you saving them for election times? Why aren't you making things better in between? Like, that's when you could be making the biggest improvement in your country, and people would stand back and go, wow, look, they did so much for us. We still trust them. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
There doesn't. It's like it's more like a reality show now. Look what celebrities backing this person. Look what this person said. It's not about the information. It's not about the people. It's entertainment.
Well, what you just said there. You look at the Kamala Harris. She had Megan Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah, you talk about it's a show. That's a show. You look at Trump, you've got Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan. It's a show. Great entertainment, love it, great job. Where's the facts? What are we fixing here, guys? I don't need to see Megan Stallion. I don't need to see Hulk Hogan. I need to see results. Like, I want to know what you guys are going to do down there, because your economy affects my economy. So I kind of want to know what's going on.
Yeah, and as Americans, I think we sometimes do forget, just kind of the ripple effect we have around the world. And, we probably need to get out of our toddler phase and start thinking about the consequences of our actions a lot more. And to your point about, politicians actually coming down with facts, that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about Vivek Ramaswamy's candidacy when he was running, because he was outlining plans. He's like, okay, so there are these laws in place, and this is what we're constitutionally allowed to do, and this is legal authority that if I was elected, I could use. And he would just outline step by step how what he wanted to accomplish could legally be accomplished with laws that we have right now. Today, not now, if Congress cooperates with me or if the Supreme Court says, no, it wasn't that. It's like, this is what I could do today if I was in the executive branch. And, whenever he was talking, like, oh, tell me more. Just because that's the kind of thing that I'm actually looking for. I want to hear those kinds of solid plans, because, and then, if he fell short, you could really hold him accountable. Like, dude, you have everything you need. you know, that re-election campaign, oh, it's not going to go well for you if you don't get on the stick. There would be a little bit more connection.
Now do it.
Yeah. And I was so aggravated that people didn't take him as seriously in the moment as what they probably would be prepared to do now. And I'm like, please let us still exist in 2028. Please let us still exist in 2028.
I'm crossing my fingers for the same thing. I see violence is life. For real, husband is finally getting foreman pay, but we are still struggling more. My friend, my husband has a fantastic job. He works at Costco. He makes great money. The amount of taxes that get taken out of our paycheck is over, I think it's just a little over $1,300. So we don't even see $1,300 worth of that pay. So I feel your husband's struggle. It's not easy in this economy. It just seems to be taxes upon taxes upon taxes. And there has to be some fix to that as well on both sides, in Canada and the States. We need money to live. If inflation is going to happen and things are going up, taking more taxes off of our paychecks is not helping us survive as a country. We're slipping, and you're going to see more and more Canadians and Americans falling into debt. Pierre Polyev, Jade, you sent me that video when he explained it with the apples. I'll let you take it. I was just thinking that. I'll let you take it because that was a really good analogy there.
I really enjoyed it because the way he put it was, you've got 10 apples and you've got all these people everybody needs to eat. So instead of going, okay, well, apples should be $1, people go, okay, well, we'll increase, we'll increase taxes. We'll make more money. We'll print more money, right? So that means there's more money. No, that doesn't mean there's more money. It means that the market price of those apples goes from $1 to $2.
Yeah. I mean, and that's literally what inflation is. And it's criminal that our schools don't educate us about this, is that the definition of inflation is an increase in the money supply. And, oh gosh, okay, my thought left me, but it will come back. I just wanted to share, Violence is Life's very American sensibility. Taxation is theft. We have very strong views about taxation here. We hate it, and we hate the people who impose them. And also the economic issue that also relates into, this unrestricted, illegal, legal, or otherwise of immigration. It's just because when a country is struggling to take care of the people already there, it doesn't seem prudent or proper to say, yes, rest of the world, you can just resettle here. It'll be fine. Like, you need to stabilize things before you can even think. I mean, if you didn't have any food in the refrigerator, you're not inviting people over saying, let's do Thanksgiving together. You can't feed them. You just literally cannot do that.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we're running into here a little bit with the issues in immigration and violence is life. Right. I'll get to what you're saying with, I
don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why you've been particularly selected to be persecuted by the internet glitches, but apparently that's your role today. So I'm sorry, the internet is mean.
We can blame the Canadian government and just shutting you down because we joke constantly back and forth. Her and I will be on the phone and we'll be talking about something politics or schools will come up and then the phone will cut out and we'll be like, oh, another thing we're not allowed to talk about.
Some people in America, whenever that happens to them or they're doing their podcast, they'll say, so for the Fed who's been assigned to me, I just want you to know, hope you're having a really beautiful day. I would love not to hate your guts. If you could quit committing treason against the people, that'd be totally great. That would be fantastic.
I just joked with Sapphire yesterday. I was like, I really hope we're next to each other on the watch list.
She did say that. Yeah.
I swear. These days, if a person isn't on a watch list, I mean, what are they even doing with their lives at this point? Because when you think about
do something the church would burn you for 400 years ago, what are you doing with your life?
Yes.
Yeah, for real.
And violence is life. I see you made another comment. Teach as far as finances is appalling. Oh, yeah. Here in Canada, how it works in high school, at least where I went, and we're in Nova Scotia. So you have math advanced, you have math academic, you have math foundations, and you have math essentials. And if you are in math essentials, you are considered the lowest of the low when it comes to math. However, that is the only class you could take that teaches you taxes. that teaches you finances, that teaches you about your day-to-day expenses. And looking back, I wish I had been in the lowest of the low, because at least I would know how to navigate a pay stub, which we weren't taught in math academic or math foundations for that matter. I would have known how to do my taxes without having to get my poor father to sit me down year after year and re-explain it over and over and over again. The school system here is failing kids immensely in all of that regard.
Yeah, and it's so absurd to describe things you're going to use every single day. It's like, oh, only lesser people do that. I'm like, that is the most hideous distortion of the aristocratic spirit I've ever seen, because at least the actual aristocrats, they were always trying to elevate things and make it better quality, more gracious, more beautiful, more this, more that. It wasn't this whole, we don't need to know about actual things. And here are these schools are like, you don't need to know what will help you through life. I'm like, you are setting children up to fail. Why is no one jailing you?
Absolutely setting our kids up for failure. And even more so, if you go to our local Costco and you grab a Canadian curriculum book, and I remember grabbing them during COVID just to keep my kids up to date because schools had completely shut down. And my oldest was, I think, in grade 3 when it all started to go downwards, and they didn't have any grade 3 left. So I grabbed grade 2 and I figured, I'll go off of it. I'll build something off of grade 2. And the first page was multiplication for a grade 2. And it was simple. It was like 2 times 2 or 2 times 1. And so I sat my son down and I said, buddy, we're going to go over this a little bit together just so I see where you're at. He's like, what's that X? He had never done multiplication. Now, this is a Canadian curriculum book, and I live in Nova Scotia, and he had never done multiplication. He's in grade 3. He's never had a spelling test in his life. Like, academically, we're failing our children. And not only are we failing them, we're sticking them in front of Chromebooks for 6 hours a day where they're staring at screens, where information for them is instantaneous. They do not have to research anymore. So not only are we failing them on an academic side, we're failing them on like an intellectual side of being able to find their own information, to be able to research on their own, to let them think about something and think about it for a while, which is why I think we end up with kids failing so hard with communication and why we end up with so much violence, because what's the quickest way to get the results I want? I'm going to punch you in the face. Bang.
Yeah.
And this is the generation we're running into now.
Yeah, and you earlier, before we went live, we were kind of discussing about some of the deficiencies in our own pagan community about people essentially not doing their homework and not getting underneath the skin of things. And of course, I suppose with the younger ones, this is going to be even more prevalent. And this feels like just a consequence and an extension of the way the schools failed them. Suddenly they're being expected to do research and think for themselves and examine information in a way that they have never been required for in their life. I mean, this is just me thinking out loud, but I'm beginning to think we're going to have to really reevaluate the way we convey our beliefs to newcomers who are interested. We're going to have to really think about what level are they coming from so that we can, help get them on firmer footing.
Well, Jade, you'd be a good one for that because you gave me my firm footing in all of this.
I mean, my paganism, I was not unlike most people in my generation. I was raised by Christians, but I never followed suit. And it also came that my mother had, while she went to church, she also believed, I grew up on a farm. So I was always told, if God exists, he's everywhere. Because I would ask, why do I have to go to church and my grandfather doesn't? Because I grew up in a non-traditional family. It was my mother, me, my grandparents, and we lived on a family communal farm. So my uncle and his kids were there, and we worked together on the farm, and we ate what we grew and what we, the animals, everything. So yes, I was raised with Christian values and I was taught the teachings of Jesus, but I was also taught the natural side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So the communal aspect, that this is where your food comes from, which is another thing lacking from today's generations, is I can go to a grocery store and get what I need. I can skip the dishes and it comes right to me. I don't have to do anything. Why would I learn to cook? Why would I understand how meat is processed, how food is grown, why there's no seeds in our food anymore because GMO is a thing?
Yeah, again, back to that Dr. Frankenstein laboratory is best thing I was mentioning earlier. By the way, Violence is Life very much admires your family farm.
Thank you. It was a wonderful upbringing. I actually just recently got some old family photos of it, so I can't wait to hang them up. And like I said, that's the way I was raised. So I mean, yes, I live in the city right now, but we have a community garden. I have plants all along my balcony.
Mm-hmm.
Sapphire and I have a garden in her backyard that we work on together. So even though we live in this small area, this city with all this concrete around us, we're still instilling those values in our kids. So there's no excuse
Mm-hmm.
in my mind for not teaching your kids about being more in tune with nature, or even educating yourself more on it.
Oh, yeah. Because all of us, and no matter where we are, city or country, there's always something we can do to get in tune with those cycles in some fashion. And one thing I've noticed in the past year or two, all of a sudden, I'm starting to notice a renewal of enthusiasm for the various celebrations that are, agricultural in nature. Broadly the Wheel of the Year, but of course, every tradition has kind of its own iteration of basically that base idea. And I wonder if part of that is just that hunger to get back in tune with nature itself. And of course, our seasonal celebrations as pagans, that is probably the easiest gateway.
I absolutely agree. I think it's the best way to start getting back into those. And we call them the old ways, but they're really just the natural ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just being more
Yeah.
in tune with nature, realizing that the earth, Gaia, as I like to refer to, Gaia has
Mm-hmm.
everything that we could need. And here we are trying to improve upon what she's given us with putting up apartment complexes and um, clear cutting spaces to make room for these apartment complexes. And I see it especially in our neighborhood. There's deer getting into people's gardens and they curse these deer like we didn't take their home from them and then expect them to just find somewhere else to go. So there's a symbiosis that's missing with us in the
Oh,
natural
yeah.
world.
Oh, absolutely, there is. And I think that kind of ties into our discussion about trying to restore independent thought, because it's not just education, it's not just politics. It's about, thinking about how we even live life. And what you say about, the natural ways, that's what really actually gives me a lot of hope and comfort that no matter what happens to us in the future, even if there was another wiping out of pagan knowledge and they actually made a proper job of it this time, you would still have a form of this spirituality eventually reborn, because you would see the masculine and feminine energies at work. You would see the cycles of nature. You would see the need that you are part of a web and you have to operate in that context. And I think that hopefully people's instincts are starting to open their minds to that. But what are you guys seeing on your end? Because, I mean, of course, in Twitter, we have some overlap between our accounts, but you guys definitely see things that I don't.
I was rocking a fence when Jade came into my life, and she kind of gave me the push to the natural ways and introduced me to Gaia. And I started with Twitter and trying to find a bit of a community online to learn more. Some of the things that I do see in a lot of comments that pagans post is, repent.
It always does that when she's making a really good point. Have you noticed that, Jade?
They're at it again.
Okay, dear federal agent that is watching me right now. Thank you for your concern, but we're okay.
Take a coffee break.
Oh. One of the things that I see
you were saying, dear.
One of the things I see a lot on Twitter, in like pagan comments and stuff like that, or even if I make a pagan post, and I'm pretty quick to get rid of it or hide the comment, repent, Jesus saves. Okay, that's lovely. Glad to hear Jesus saves. but I'm going to stick to my thing and you stick over there to yours. One of my favorite things is when people say they're going to pray for me, and I'm like, cool. And that's literally my response, just cool. Because if you continue on, it just eggs them on and they think they can save you. It's a whole thing. I'm not interested in arguing with anybody.
Obnoxious.
It does. And I'm not interested in arguing with anybody about like religion, especially coming from a Catholic background. You know, I know my facts on that side of it. I know my facts on my new and improved, as I like to say, path of a natural way, protector. And I do like to say protector of the old ways because I find the warrior in me strong. I could argue with you, but that goes back to what I said right at the beginning of this. If I argue with you and I don't defeat you with grace and give you room to be still standing tall, it's just me antagonizing what I don't want. And that's violence on violence and hate on hate. And it goes back to that. And I don't know how many of your followers will appreciate this. Tom McDonald, his song, I Hate You. It's just, and that's what it turns into. And that's not what I'm interested in.
I really enjoy his work. I mean, he makes the point very, very well. And it isn't just criticizing what's going on and saying, you know, hey, this dynamic, it doesn't end well and it's getting us nowhere. We're circling the drain of despair. But a lot of them are also very helpful because sometimes in his songs he'll be pointing to there's a better way. We can get beyond this. And don't you want to? And we really need a lot more people putting that sort of thing into the atmosphere because all of us, you know, we're witches, you know, we're familiar with how spell work functions and how energy functions. And we know wherever our energy is concentrated, you know, the universe doesn't really hear, I don't want that. It doesn't hear the not. It doesn't hear, you know, what we're trying to avoid. And so what ends up manifesting is the very thing we wanted to not have happen. And I've been trying to convey that. And with all love and respect to our brothers, sometimes they are just as antagonistic as our Christian brethren over yonder, because I'll tell them where you're focusing on what you don't want, you are actively making that outcome much more likely. Like, well, you're a witch and that's great. You know, it's very cute and sparkly, I'm sure. But, you know, we're men and we have to discuss things. And I'm like, the witch was the advisor to the king for a reason. Now, don't make me go outside and get you a switch and whack you for a while.
Yes.
Because that's what a person feels driven to. Because I'm like, I'm being pushed to say these things for a reason. I understand how this energy works. And if you don't believe me, you could ask 50 others, even of ones who politically disagree with you, and they could tell you the exact same thing. Why is this hard?
Jade, I'm going to hand that one over to you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like if you can't push those who have your back. You know, you can't go, I need your help on this. I want your opinion. And then when you give it, go, you know what you're saying. Like, it's just so difficult. And we get it even within the communities. Like you say,
yeah.
If they're coming at us, it doesn't make it, two wrongs don't make a right. Right. Like you can't go back at them and say, well, you're wrong because our ways came first.
Yeah, because it's not about who was first. It's about what works.
Exactly.
Yes. And if you take religion out of it, what works is community. What works is listening to one another, solving the problem together. And that's the bigger picture. I can be pagan, you can be Christian, you can be Muslim. Hi, kitty. You can be whatever you want to be, but we need to be a community. And in order for us to build up the world, we have to work together. Despite our political and religious differences, we want a happy, peaceful world. Is that not the common thing that we're looking for here? So,
I mean, I would think so.
Like, we have to put these, and it's like that pendulum I talk about. It swung so far right, and then it swings so far left that all we're doing is yelling at each other. And it goes for religion too. You know, especially right now, pagans are kind of back here just being like, we'll just let them fight it out, I guess. Like, you know,
she'll be back with us. You were making too much sense. I'm telling you, you were making too much sense, and it had to be stopped.
My federal agent is mean.
Maybe
Am
I
I
don't want to
back?
be next on the watch list.
You are back.
We got the pendulum swinging so far right, and we got a pendulum swinging so far left that we're so focused on, and I lost my train of thought, so I'm winging it now. On what one side wants and what the other side wants, that we're not focused on what the world needs.
Yeah. And what another problem is that when people start at least being open to community, then they start worrying about who's in charge and power and all this and that. I'm like, well, to begin with, I'm not really sure if it matters who's in charge if we're, working towards a similar agreed upon goal. And for secondly, whoever has power, it shouldn't be used as a club. I mean, that's something we learned very early on in craft. This is not about using your capabilities to go whack people because they got on your nerves. You have a sacred trust. And for us, we can't be separated from our power. I mean, you might as well start separating our DNA. You would have to go back that far to remove it from us. But for people who are invested with power, either through gaining respect in the community or because of political power or whatever else that it is, to misuse that is just such a hideous, dishonorable violation of how things have to be if we're going to get ourselves out of this mess.
We can even go back to, and Jade, you're a little bit more knowledgeable on this subject than I am, I think. When like the COVID vaccines came out and Trudeau's stance on them, Trudeau's our prime minister. We have the tinfoil hat opinion that he's Castro's son.
I share that opinion. I've seen the pictures.
I believe it's valid. I won't go too far into it, but
I had to throw that spice on there for you, Jade.
100% believe it. There's no
Jade,
doubt in my mind.
Jade, I think you could comment on this a little better than me when it comes to like abuse of power and what Trudeau did in the country when it came to vaccines and some of his statements that really it forced people to do things that they didn't want to do. And just as an example, before you get into it, in order for my husband to go to work, he had to have 2 vaccines. He would not have been allowed to work if he didn't have 2 vaccines. So when we're talking about abuse of power, Jade, I'm going to give that one to you.
And I want to start off by saying I'm not an anti-vaxxer.
No, neither am I.
I am vaccinated up to the point of COVID because I do believe there is no polio, there is no diphtheria, there is no the list of what we have gotten rid of through these vaccines is amazing. This seemed to be at the ready. It seemed to be already there. There's no proof from what I've seen in people that I know that have gotten fully vaccinated. They're still getting COVID. They've got longer term symptoms than people that are without the vaccine. And to what Sapphire was saying, when it was all going down here and they started saying you have to get vaccinated, we had vax passes here. So if you didn't have proof on your phone or a physical copy, you weren't allowed to go to a restaurant. You weren't allowed to go to a witchy pagan event. You weren't allowed to do anything. So I opted, you know what? If you're going to tell me where I can and cannot go, you're not going to get my money. I'm not going to buy into this whole, if you're not vaccinated, you don't have rights. Fine. I won't do those things.
Yeah. I mean, talk about setting the stage for people to say, well, I guess
of a socialist country where you all have these rights and all of a sudden it's, well, you didn't do this one thing that I said you have to do. So therefore you can't do X, Y, Z.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of abuse of power I'm really talking about is when people are like, oh, I'm not going to say that you have certain rights that just have to be respected regardless. I'm going to say, well, everything's conditional until you annoy me. And then, I'm just going to destroy your life. I mean, I don't see how someone has to be really indoctrinated into that kind of mindset to think that such a thing would even be remotely acceptable to do. And it's horrifying to see how much of the world said, oh, okay, I guess those are my orders and I'll go take my orders and I'll go do them. I'm like, oh, this is a really bad path.
That's actually what happened here in Nova Scotia. And as Jade said, we had to have pieces of paper that said, I'm double vaxxed. They didn't expect children to have them, but the adults had to have them. And one of the biggest things too, it's like they didn't force parents to get their children vaccinated, but it was heavily pushed. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to, like, if you were anti-vaccine from birth, my kids are going to school with kids that have no vaccines whatsoever.
She'll be back with us in a moment.
Let me know when my federal agent has decided I'm worthy to speak again.
I can hear you now, dear.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, agent, for giving me this opportunity. So my kids could go to school with kids that had no vaccinations whatsoever, but they had to they were forcing this whole, like, they have to have this COVID vaccine. It's like, you know, it's parents.
There's no other vaccine that was forced on people. There's no other one that if you don't have it, you can't do this. You can't go these places. You can't. This is the only time that they've come and said, you know, you have to do this. You have not been given a choice. And I think I do know about the two of you, but you tell me I have to do something, I'm going to go, but why? Why is it that's me? I have to, why do I not have a choice? And this goes back to, like you said, the natural home remedy ways. I am very much for those. My kids get ear infections. I'm more likely to give them a concoction I've made from onions and turmeric and honey and garlic and be like, here, it's going to taste like crap, but it's going to work. As opposed to take this Tylenol, take this Advil, and in a few more hours, the pain will come back.
Yeah.
So I'm very much, most of my bookshelves are naturopath, home remedies, foraging books for our area, for Nova Scotia, Mi'kmaq healing books, native healing books of different types, because those ways worked and they still work. They still get rid of things, even things that we have created vaccines that we say don't exist. They could pop up again. Those ways are going to work. They're going to continue to always work because we don't build an immunity to them like we do our modern medications.
Yes.
Well, and it's coming in a form that our body actually recognizes.
Why are there 3-4 boosters? Why do you have to get it redone? Why do you have to? And I see a lot of people even within my own family, my grandmother, for instance, who's 87, has had every vaccine, every booster that they have said she has to have. She has had COVID 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you pointed out, it's like, this doesn't operate as advertised. Like, you conspiracy theorists, you're ignorant, you're unsophisticated, you're probably a bad person. Maybe we should put you in a little camp. Because our Australian cousins, they actually had places where people could be. And I thought, okay, what did we learn nothing from World War II about how that would be received? It's not going to matter what the excuse is. I mean, and if the thing with COVID is that it has such a high survival rate, even in the beginning, that if it had been the civilization, if this had been Black Death 2.0 or bubonic plague or any of the really nasty things that have gone around in history, you wouldn't have had to tell people, maybe you kind of limit who you associate with, maybe you be extra careful, maybe you take some precautions, because people's instinct to survive would have been activated and be like, nope, this house, it's good, we'll garden, it'll be fine. I mean, if it had been a serious threat, people would have naturally conducted themselves accordingly. And when it had to be forced, I mean, not enough people asked, why? Who does this actually serve?
They also didn't give us the proper information in the beginning, because the shutdown didn't happen until March break here. It was March break but it was the Christmas the following year that my youngest and my mother got it. And I took my youngest because it was 2-3 days, 104 temperature, 102 temperature. And I took her to the hospital and they told me, it's a viral infection. It's fine. It'll pass. Cut to a few months later and it's this big, big thing. And you had a chance at stopping it. You had a chance at, here's patient 0. Here's all the warning signs for it. You ignored that.
Oh, yeah.
Now you want me to follow suit with whatever you're saying?
And wasn't it Sweden who just said, well, I mean, it's a virus. We're just going to let it pass through us, get it over with. We'll deal with the consequences and then it's done. And from what I understand, they haven't had significant issues since they took that approach. I'm like, God, it's like someone chose to handle this in a way that was sensible and natural, and it worked out better for them. How many times should we repeat this process? Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up and my federal agent, just chill out over here, wherever you are, federal agent. I'm glad you brought up World War II, because again, my husband and I were talking, and he said, he's like, that generation was raised with such a sense of duty, such a sense of work ethic, honor, get what you earn what you get. And it meant so much more. And we're looking at this generation coming up, and I'm going to get canceled here in a second. We're looking at a very sheepish generation of people. They comply very easily, and it's, again, I do blame a lot of it on social media and the ability to just
as she
keep
predicted.
scrolling.
This federal agent is a dick.
I'm gonna have to deal with that pouty face the rest of the day now.
I gotta make it fun. We gotta make it fun. But my husband said, he's like, would we see that today in this generation? If it came down to, and I'm not saying I want it, YouTube, please, and federal agent, if it came down to world war, would we see our young men and women stand up and say, I'm gonna fight for my country? I'm going to put my future on hold. I'm going to put everything to a stop to give my children, the next generation, the best future they could possibly have with all the opportunities they can possibly have. Would the generation do that today like they did back then? And the answer is no, they wouldn't, because they don't understand the value of earning what you have at this point. Did you lose me again?
Well, not only that, they've been taught their civilization. Good. No. We got you there. But I was kind of furthering your point, is that on top of that, on the entitlement and, the really horrendous way they were raised, there's also, they have been told their entire lives that their civilization is evil. If they are of European descent, they've essentially been told that their skin color is the original sin. And if they don't have of European descent, or not primarily, they've been said, oh, your life is hard and everyone hates you. I mean, and I'm thinking, you're asking these people to defend the country when you've essentially told them it isn't worth defending, that there's nothing good here. I mean, what did they think was going to happen? Because I know the powers that be want World War III. They've been trying very hard to plunge us into that state, and I don't know what makes them think that it's just going to be, World War II all over again. Of like, yeah, Uncle Sam, he called me up. I'm gonna go get the Nazis. That's not the spirit of the children.
That's not what's going to happen. And it was a couple months ago, they had that TikTok trend. I don't know if you guys seen it, but it was these, I think they would have probably been millennials being like, my pink camo and my cute little running shoes for the trench. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well. If this happens, like, we are essentially, I won't use the word because I'll get canceled.
Well, I swear on my channel, so
it can be satire all at once. It could be satire all at once. It's true. There is a base level of truth to it, and I see it. I see it all the time in the kids in the neighborhood. They don't want to help out with the older kids. They'll walk by an elderly person without stopping to help them. We witnessed it that day with that woman on the corner who had Alzheimer's and confused. The amount of people that walked by this old elderly lady who clearly didn't know where she was, who she was looking for, where she was supposed to be, and people are just walking by her. No regard for the fact that there's somebody in need there. And I mean,
it's that could be your grandma.
They just don't want to take the time out of their day because what are they going to do for me? What does that get me?
And it goes back to when my husband had to help that little girl, and she was pushing her mother in a wheelchair up a very steep hill. They had gone sledding. This was back in the winter, and my husband was driving his mom home. Speaking of husband, thank you for the coffee, dear. He stopped and parked his car to help push this poor woman up the hill. That is what it means to be Christian. That is what it means to love one another. That is what Jesus' message was. Not leaving the poor old woman on the side corner who thought she was in British Columbia when she was in Nova Scotia, standing there confused and scared.
Yeah.
you know, so now you got the two pagans coming along that are going to be helpful when nobody else was. But this is what we're talking about as like that community. You don't see that anymore. You're not going to see a kid stop and help somebody up. Like, it's just not, it's not what you see anymore.
Well, I mean, and I think you kind of got it in one, is that there needs to be an example set by older people, like your husband. He got out, he did the thing. Anyone who saw that saw the example of what the right thing to do is, of just being, you know, neighborly. I mean, this business of treating people in this detached way as though we have no connection to one another, that strikes me as really weird and unique to our particular time period. This I don't get the sense of this is how it was, you know, for say my parents, their parents, or beyond. It feels like this has been artificially induced.
I thought Jade was going to say something there. It very much does. No, it very much does. And again, the sense of community, we've lost that. And as a single mother of 3 kids, if I hadn't moved here to the city, if I hadn't found Sapphire and the friends that I have, everybody else, society, most people I knew, well, those are your kids. That was your decision. That's your problem. And while I understand and appreciate, yes, they are my children, they are my responsibility, and I do take care of them. Mm-hmm. But if that doesn't stop me from helping somebody else that's struggling, that doesn't stop me. Like, I have a neighbor downstairs from me who lives by herself. And if I make supper and I have extra and I know it's just going to be leftovers, I send one of my kids down. Here you go. Take this downstairs to Brenda. We're going to help her out because that's what you do. And I mean, mm-hmm. that's really what we're missing these days is just if I have and this person doesn't have, why can't I help them? Why is it that you can't see a single mother struggling to do something on her own, to go get groceries, to, you know, have 5 minutes to herself? You can't go, hey, you know what? I've got you. Mm-hmm. And not expect anything in return.
Yeah.
Chances are she is going to remember that and not help somebody else. You know what I mean? And that's how that sense of community comes back.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Well, and I think that part of this has been a really toxic twisting of what individualism is, and I feel like it's our fault on the American side because we've been so, you know, fixated on this. I'm an individual. I do it all myself. Blah blah blah. That we completely lost sight of community. We forgot what it was and what it means to be part of a people, and seeing that these are things that are balancing. You know. We'll be able to probably touch on all of the Hermetic principles and how they apply today, because it is about that polarity. It is about, you know, that as above, so below. It is about all of these things in which, you know, you have balancing energies, and it isn't one or the other. It's about the appropriate thing at the appropriate time in the appropriate amount and being part of that ebb and flow. And I do feel like it is my country's fault and that we've been infecting other people with that. Oh, you don't have to care about anybody, you know, and I think this is a very weird self-image that we need to grow out of as society. I don't have to care about anybody. I don't want to be in relationship to one another. There was actually a witch that she and I ended up parting company because I kept saying that we have to have some sense of connectivity. Cultural togetherness, a sense of we have a shared overarching identity that makes us closer than to someone, you know, who isn't, you know, one of us, essentially, you know, someone who isn't part of the country, essentially. And I got a lot of pushback. And it was because of essentially of this really toxic individualism, which is just as damaging as the way socialism and communism really transformed and twisted what collectivism and community is supposed to be. It's the distortions, it's the corruptions.
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're taking it and instead of making it a communal thing, making it how we can help each other, it's, well, you have to live by what one person says. It always comes back to one person is going to want more than the other. And I think you're right. And by and large, in the Western civilizations, I'm not going to pick on the US.
I don't know. We might deserve it. I mean, I won't put up with us being too far criticized if we don't deserve it. But if we deserve it, I will totally take it.
We've become so consumeristic. It's not so much look what we've built together. It's look what I have. You don't have that. I have all of this, and you don't have anything. And like even down to like a lot of people get picked on in school. You don't have Reeboks. Why don't you have Nike? Why don't you have? It shouldn't be about the name brand. It should be the fact that that kid is taken care of. So instead of going, is everybody okay? It's I've got me and that's all I care about. Who gives a shit about anybody else?
Yeah, as if you could, just have an entire world on yourself. We are all interdependent, whether we recognize it or not.
And I think we're experiencing that here a lot more. I'm going to speak on Nova Scotia just because that's where we live. I do see a lot of that more. It's like, I got me, you do you. Like, I don't need to help you. We're seeing a lot more of that. And we see the agenda being pushed more and more to like, give me. I want more. I need more. I need more. I need to be on top. I need to be popular. I need to be liked by, and I mean, I don't need to be popular. I'm losing followers left, right, and center on Twitter. I'm sure I'll lose a couple more after this. I just want to see the community built in balance. And we use each other's talents. Nobody is better than the other person. I'm really good at one thing. Jade's really good at one thing. You're really good at one thing. So we'll combine our talents in our community.
Yeah.
Have, the younger generation learning, okay, like this is the talents you're interested in. Okay, let's embellish that. Let's work on that. Let's grow. And then it furthers the generations and encourages peace instead of the violence that we're seeing. I cut out again, didn't I?
Will you let her come back? But yeah, you're right. I mean, it would encourage peace. And also, what about just the sense of relief to know that, you don't have to be like this human Swiss Army knife. All the skills, all the talents, all this, I have to do it. It's all up to me. It's like, no, I can be good at the things I'm good at. And I can, trade and exchange and rely upon the people who are good at things that I'm not good at. I mean, and what about in the most simplest stage about, with marriage? One of the great things is that hopefully you end up with someone who has strengths where you have weaknesses. And so you have a little bit more give and take. I mean, and honestly, when I was single, I looked for that. I'm like, okay, here's the things I don't know anything about. I don't want to know anything about. I will never care about, but are still kind of necessary, need to get taken care of. Those are my dudes. That is my pool. And thankfully, one of them decided I was his cup of tea. And for reasons that escape me, he still puts up with me. But essentially, I mean, it's about we strive to find balance.
It's the yin and yang of everything. The light and the dark and the dark and the light.
Yeah. I think on that topic too, and this is one thing, and this isn't, the next thing I'm about to say is not an anti-LGBTQ comment, but I think that women are spending so much time trying to do everything that men are doing. We're forgetting that men are designed to do things that we can't, that we're meant to balance each other. And when it comes to like a marriage, as an example, my husband is going to have different talents than I'm going to have. I'm going to be better at certain things. He's going to be better at certain things. That's a family dynamic. As a world dynamic, we're doing the same thing. Women are pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and men are being pushed down further and further and further. It's like you're forgetting that men have a purpose here. They are meant to help balance us. I'll be the first to say in an intense situation, I will get overly emotional first. He will ground me. He'll be like, no, back away. Put the fist down, dear. Like, don't need to fight it this one.
That feels familiar. Just saying.
Well, and I mean, we have to remember that balance. And that's the thing that this generation also isn't getting. They're not seeing the equality of men and women. I'm not saying that women haven't been oppressed, but I'm also saying we might be pushing it a little too far to the one side of the pendulum that we're not going to be able to come back from.
Yeah, well, and it's causing a knee-jerk reaction. A lot of the guys who call themselves red-pilled, not so much in the sense of right-wing politics, but more so in the sense of gender wars, they sound to me the same as the most virulent anti-male feminist I've ever heard in my life. It is hate, it is degradation. It's all like and sometimes I have very foolishly inserted myself into these conversations and Twitters, and I've basically said, children Do you not understand you are promoting the same problem and that your solution will require different tactics? So I get yelled at a lot, but I feel like occasionally someone needs to say this just in case someone has an open mind and they hear it.
Just that little open-mindedness would be great. But Jade, I know you deal with that on a regular basis on Twitter and other social media accounts.
I deal with so many things on Twitter, so many other different social media accounts. I get a lot of hate for different reasons for aspects of who I am. I mean, I'm a very big pusher of, and you know this, Sapphire. It's, you know what, I could label myself 100 different things. Pagan, bisexual, leftist, liberal. There's so many things that you can put a label on. At the end of the day, how about I'm just Jade? How about I just get to be me, and you don't get to put your ideals of who you think I should be on me, or use my ideals against me. I mean, for instance, I was married for a long time to a man, had 3 kids, still identified as bisexual. The LGBTQ community, no hate, love y'all. I was called a breeder. I'm like, but that's not the case. That's not who I am. My husband was white, I was white, so we got called racist. Well, I left my husband
just for having the skin tone, nothing else.
Just for living, just for existing.
You also had the dreadlocks, and you had the dreadlocks.
I had dreadlocks for a long time because I like the natural ways go hippie, pagan. I had dreadlocks. Cultural appropriation. Well, locks appear everywhere across the board. It's a hairstyle.
Yeah.
I left my ex-husband. I happened to be living with someone who was African. So I actually had a man come up to me in Walmart one day and say, "You're a race traitor." I'm like, so so far in my life, I'm a breeder. I'm racist, and I'm a race traitor.
Oh,
and
gosh.
This is all other people putting their ideals and their perspectives of what they see when they look at me on me, not knowing anything about me as a person.
I'm not sure where to start unpacking that, but I guess I'll start with the whole breeder thing, because that's I really dislike that label because it implies that someone does not love their children and is not glad to have them here.
Not only that, it puts on me that I didn't get to choose, or I chose to be this way, where you're born who you are. Okay. I was born this way. And whether you decide that because I have children, I'm straight, or because if I'm a woman, I'm gay, and there can be no in between, that doesn't change my point of view. That doesn't change who I am at my core.
And it implies that you did something wrong by reproducing, which I thought, wow. I mean, I get that parenthood isn't always for everyone, sometimes because temperamental reasons, they're not suited, or because of biological reasons. I mean, I myself had 3 miscarriages in my early 20s. And by the time I ended up remarrying and was in a stable relationship, well, I was 37 years old. Odds weren't good. I mean, haven't hit menopause yet, so I suppose he could always give me a late in the game surprise. God. But I mean, there are reasons. There are legitimate reasons why people do or do not do certain things, and to label that in any kind of way, then simply say, "Oh, Jane has children, Sue doesn't." Anything more than that is just kind of information. That just really betrays something very ugly, and I'm not sure how to articulate it beyond that. And then the whole, you're racist because you're white, or you're a race traitor because you were living with someone who was not white.
Yeah,
that's just so Looney Tunes to me. I mean,
no one. I think how people only see from their own perspective. They don't stop to think about or get to know somebody. It's, oh, this is who you are. Not for me. You're wrong, and it's absolutely ludicrous in my mind.
it does seem like no one's allowed to just to be a whole complete person with a real personality and real preferences and real life history. That's what it's really boiling down to me. And when I see that segmentation, that's kind of where my brain takes me, whether we're talking about, gender, sexuality, political, religious issues, whatever the thing is. It's just about break people down into pieces until they're not actually a person anymore.
Exactly.
Dehumanization is the word.
I was just going to say dehumanization. You break somebody down to the point that they give up. They don't know what to do, and then they end up following the masses. And I hate to say it, but the masses lead to destruction, violence, bigotry, racism. It's just either one end of the scale or the other. When you follow those masses, that is where you're going to end up. And you're only going to end up hurting yourself more in the end. And I think that's part of our conversation today. It's the biggest part, is being free thinkers, open-minded. Do your research. Don't scroll on TikTok and take everything for fact. The term breeder is thrown around this province, this country quite a bit for bisexual women that have children. It's fact. It is. The new thing that's coming out is if you support Pierre Poilievre, you are a white supremacist. So I look forward to that label being put on myself, because I do support Pierre Poilievre. I think he's very pro-Canadian. Do I like everything about him? No. But I don't like everything about Trump. And I think he's pro-American, which is good for America. But in just this conversation alone, and the wrong person hears me say that, I'm instantly, judged, dehumanized. You're a terrible person. Moving on to the next one.
You're going to hell.
Yeah, no one's. I mean, yeah, that's what it is. It's essentially we're seeing kind of the secular version of you're going to hell. And, that ties back into what we've talked about how politics becoming the religion. And it makes a really poor master. I mean, and I can't think of any history or culture I've studied to where their politics is like, we conducted ourselves honorably with high-minded ideals and integrity and intelligence. I mean, you don't see that. You see people who occasionally made the efforts, and then the really unfortunate parts of their history are when people got away from it. But politics, there's always something that's going to be inherently sordid about it. But it doesn't necessarily have to follow to where the civilization as a whole has to follow its lead. And because our culture is getting centered on politics in this hideous way, I do feel like it is degrading us in that way. I do feel like, it's going to really complicate our ability to say to people, the government, your political party, your opinions, they're not actually a deity. They're really not.
No.
You don't need to be worshiping these things. And
what's worse is what
trying
we're doing.
To encourage people to fill that hole with something that actually is fit for purpose. That's going to become increasingly challenging.
And what's worse is what we're doing is so you got Trump over here. He's got Kid Rock. He's got Hulk. You got Kamala Harris over here. She's got somebody help me.
What's Armstrong
and Megan.
Megan Thee Stallion, yeah.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah. Okay, so it's like, so I'm a fan of Megan Thee Stallion, so I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm not going to do any research because Megan Thee Stallion's performing, so obviously she's the right candidate. Or I'm an old school guy. I like Hulk Hogan and Kid Rock, so I'm going to vote for Trump because, they're voting for Trump, so now I got to vote for Trump. This is what we're falling into. We're worshiping celebrities and politicians. We're not doing our research to find out, okay, what's the policies? What are you going to implement? How are you going to help the economy? Stuff like that. This is what our world is coming to, is the worship of celebrities and politicians.
Politics is meant to flow so that we don't have to pay attention to it. It's meant to take care of policies so that we can go about our day-to-day lives and not have to be concerned with the greater good, not the greater good, but the bigger picture where we're going as
all
a people.
The time.
We're supposed to be able to elect these officials, and they are supposed to represent us. They are not representing us anymore. There is no representation.
Oh, none whatsoever. And that seems to be a theme in every single country. And I'm more aware of this within English-speaking countries just because I speak English, and therefore I am able to understand the commentary associated with those countries. But, I see indications of it in the Spanish-speaking world lately. The fuss that's going on in Venezuela, people, they've had it. and the dictator, he's decided they need to take it a bit more and is coming into conflict. And I just feel like this is the same theme of just people saying, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't
And the
want
other thing,
it's unworthy of a human being to be reduced down to this level.
I'm not calling myself a liberal or conservative or right or left anymore. I've decided that, and I decided this a long time ago, my political stance was going to be informed. Quote, that's it. I'm informed. And that I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not even in the middle. I'm just going to be informed. And I'm not going to watch a TikTok video and take it for truth. I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to find the full clip that's unedited. I'm going to watch start to finish and find out what the actual issue is. What are they actually going to do for me, type of thing. I'm so tired of just, okay, so these are your political views, so you're a liberal. These are your political views, so you're conservative. It's like, nope, I'm just informed now. I know what's going on both sides.
And I think that's where a lot of people get lost too, is they don't inform themselves on, because we stop and we look at the big names. We look at your Harrises, your Trumps, your Trudeaus, your Poilievres. We don't stop and go, okay, so who's actually running in my riding? Who's the person that's going to actually be responsible for my area? And what are they going to do that's like here in Halifax? Who's going to be the best for me and my community and my life here in Halifax? It's a trickle down to get to the top. Okay. It really is what it is. The way it should be viewed anyway. It should be viewed, okay, this is the person that does the best for me. And that's where you concern, not the big guy at the top, because that's going to end up the way it does. As long as you inform yourself and you do what is best for you and your area and your constituent, not just the big top name. That's really what it comes down to for politics. And a lot of people forget that.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be increasingly important because, I think we all agree that the trend is towards further destabilization unless something occurs to kind of break that up a bit. But as destabilization further occurs, it's going to be more and more important about who the people are in your local area, because if there should be a breakdown, and not even necessarily a breakdown of civil or political disorder, suppose a natural disaster or something of that kind, an asteroid hit the next town and now you're dealing with the fallout, who the mayor is, what the police force are like, what your neighbors can do, what kind of health officials you have. Those are the people who are going to matter most. That's really what's going to chart your destiny, absolutely the most. And I think that we are starting to see a little bit of a refocusing upon about who is actually around me. And that includes, who's around me who understands that despite our disagreements, we're going in kind of the same direction. We want to live in the same kind of world. And I really have encouraged people in the past, and I'm encouraging them more and more. If you live in an environment that is really, really hostile to all of your viewpoints, now is probably the time to get away from people who at least don't hate you for who you are or what you think, because if push came to shove, at least you wouldn't be in immediate danger. And I know it's hard to move, especially for people with children, but you've got to think about the safety of your children if the worst should occur. And I'm sorry to say, we have to at least consider that's a possibility.
I know it's a strong possibility.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Jade, you're on this one.
It is a strong possibility. And you have to not just think about yourself on that, because there's so many people that are worried about that right now. I know in our area alone, we're a very diverse community. A lot of my neighbors are Muslim. I'm not necessarily concerned about myself because I have some comments made about my lifestyle, me as a person. I don't take that to heart, really. But for the most part, as a community, we get along fairly well. But there are aspects of, if certain things go down, is there going to be hate thrown at one specific area of our community? And I don't want to pick on anybody and say, like, I guess I could go pagan, like, pagans, we're not really under the microscope right now. Nobody's really paying attention to us. We're on the back burner. We're nobody's problem at the moment. But with what's going on between two different, if you can't stop and go, okay, we're both doing things wrong, we could both make a positive change, we're both hurting people that we care about, why don't we try and figure out a way to just stop?
Yeah.
Because it's not, again, it's the extremists in all these communities. It's not your everyday people. It's not the people that we even bump into on the street.
Yeah.
It's people, and you might not even see them. You might not ever run into them. But I worry that kids see these things. We had this problem in our school around Pride Month. A lot of kids who were from different religions were tearing down pride flags and threatening to cause harm and violence and things like this because it's not what they believe in. And I guess what I'm getting at is I'm not specifically worried myself, but I know that there are so many out there that don't know when all of this hits the fan if they're going to be safe in their areas. There's going to be rioting. There's going to be protests. There's already protests.
Mm-hmm.
We, on our end, when it comes to protests, I know they shut down Jade, correct me if I'm wrong, the Toronto Pride Parade got shut down because of protests.
New Brunswick.
Oh, it was New Brunswick. Okay.
New Brunswick can't do theirs altogether.
Okay. I do know Toronto's maybe got paused.
Toronto's had a protest pop up. Halifax has had a protest pop up. I heard firsthand accounts of the protests here in Halifax, and that it was not peaceful like the media presented it to be.
We had a friend that was down there.
There were threats made. There were lives threatened. It was a bigger deal than people wanted it to be made of.
So what I want to ask you is that at your guys' pride parades, what do you all have going on there? Is this, it's because one thing that's been happening in the United States is that people were with children present in public, engaging in sex acts and things of that nature.
And that's where I disagree with Pride altogether. I don't think that that's what Pride should be. Pride should be all inclusive. It should be a family friendly affair. You shouldn't be showing up in mesh. You shouldn't be showing up in thongs. You shouldn't be showing up in. But having said that, it's also not okay to come in on somebody else's, like if they were having a Pride event for themselves. I'm not saying gay pride. I'm saying if they were having an event for their own, culture, exactly. Would they want us stepping in and saying, you can't do that. We don't agree with it. So we're stopping it and we're interrupting it. And this is wrong. And you're going to listen to our point of view instead.
It seems like the wrong people are involved. If there was something that was, blatantly illegal going on, like, I think we all agree that sex in public is kind of over the line for the vast majority of people. But, the fact that the police aren't dealing with that and saying, dudes, bedroom, it exists for a reason. The fact that the police have been dereliction in duty, and the fact that
it's a lewd act and it is illegal. It should be dealt with in such a manner.
I don't want to see two straight people doing it on the street.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to see anybody.
None of us want to watch that.
No.
Privacy, bedroom. But I think that the uneven law enforcement actually feeds into the people acting violently, because it always comes down to, well, you won't police them, you pick on me, and so I'm going to start lashing out, and then that hideous cycle continues on.
I will say,
and they do what they're told. It's not that they're there as a mediator. They're not there to take your side or to take the other side. Yeah. They're there to stand in between you and make sure you don't, harm anybody.
Yeah.
And
which is what they should be doing.
Action is if violence does ensue and they go, okay, that breaks the law and that's where I have to step in.
Yeah. And that would be the sensible standard.
And without giving too much information, back in 2000, I think it was 2019, I was part of a fantastic community, and we were invited to be a part of the Pride Parade.
Now, while we're waiting for her to come back, Violence is Life was talking about how they have, kind of a Riley festival too, but the children aren't allowed. And I think that also makes a difference about whether or not children are present, about how people react to certain things. Anyway, now that Sapphire's back with us, please continue.
Back in 2019, part of a great organization, we were invited to be a part of our Pride Parade here in Halifax. We all graciously accepted, and I had my kids in it with me, not realizing some of the things that they were going to see. Now, looking back on that as a parent, poor choices. I had to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions the next day. My youngest son didn't really comprehend it. My oldest son was very much like, Mom. And I was like, tomorrow, later tonight, we will discuss. But it was like as you're in the parade, it was kind of special in the sense that you like, it wasn't, you could high five the crowd, everybody was singing and dancing, there was nothing crude going on that end. So it was definitely a special thing to be a part of when you're in it. Now in the lineups and things getting going and people moving into position and some of the things my kids seen, poor parenting choice. We don't support the Pride Parade here just because of some of those things. Like we can't take our kids down there, and we won't. Now, if it was a Pride Parade that was family inclusive, we definitely would be. You know, obviously very LGBTQ friendly. You can look on my social media. I have a Pride flag up. I am bisexual myself. I am married to a man. Say what you will. I don't care. But I'm very inclusive. I'm very open. I will not participate in that parade again.
Yeah, I think what would really help is just if we had kind of common agreement about what we do in public, what we don't, what's okay around just adults, and what's okay when children are around. And I think there is commonality between people of a lot of different viewpoints about where that line is. But again, I mean, it's just people have been pushed so far, and I think now a lot of people have been driven into an emotional state to where they will lash out at anything. And you're right, what you were saying earlier, Jade, about how pagans aren't really on the radar. The only time, I mean, I get a little bit more beat up on the United States from our Christian brethren, but it's usually the zealots amongst them, not your general person who's just going down the street. I mean, I have my wreath at home. There's a pentacle in the center of it. Nobody cares. No one's asked me. Yeah. I wear this out in public all the time. No one's ever said a word or backed away slowly or had any kind of reaction. We have a pagan shop in town. It just seems to be like really some of these people who are unhinged on social media, and some of them are unfortunately very prominent, who take that view. But what my concern really is that I think people are starting to look for scapegoats. It's they scapegoats to beat up on. And that's where I really come more concerned for our brothers and sisters, and why I'm so thankful that you guys are willing to speak up publicly and share your voices and your opinions and how things look from your perspective, just because there at least needs to be some contradiction to what people's prejudices think, to what they've been propagandized to believe, and just what they just don't know about or why it's been influenced by Hollywood. Because word to the wise, Hollywood never gets anything correct. If you want to know, you need to ask actual practitioners. Oh my God. The other day I saw this YouTube video. This lady was talking about, here's how witches use food that they feed you to initiate you into witchcraft. And I'm like, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
No.
So I mean, we have to speak up about this. We have to be vocal. We have to, get past, a lot of our, because it would be so much easier. Like, I'm gonna take the earth, I'm gonna put it over on top of me, and I'll live in my little hobbit hole, and no one will find me. It would be so easy to do that. But if we're going to survive, we've got to make it obvious that we're not on the same page with things that are harmful.
Absolutely agree.
We're really all natural. We're both the natural ways. We're not. People think spell work. Oh, she's gonna hex you. Well, maybe if you piss me off, but don't piss me off. Just be a decent person. But it's really about energy, like you say. It's the energy you put out there. It's manifesting. Isn't me sitting somewhere going, if I think really hard, something good will happen. It's me going, you know what? If I get up every day and I do positive things and I put positive energy out there, and I'm a nice, positive person, good things are more likely to happen than if you wake up and go, or my life sucks, everything sucks, the world sucks. Fuck it all, right?
When we go clean the park, and then what was it the next day? We found like $60 on the ground.
I mean, I'm forever, we'll go for
little rewards.
Right?
Right? My inner hippie is always like, let's take a garbage bag. Let's take a jar for broken glass. I'm forever picking up garbage or drug paraphernalia or anything that I find, because I don't want a kid to find it. I don't want another person to see that. I don't want to see it.
No.
I mean,
a lot of that stuff is dangerous.
Mom's going to get all kinds of garbage bags and stuff, and Sapphire's kids know. one of our other friend, her 3 boys know when Earth Day's coming, Jade is ready and we're
We're getting together.
Yeah.
Can we take a 5-minute pause just so I could check on kids?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can ramble on and keep everyone entertained while you go.
Awesome. I will be back. Jade, you're good. You stay. I got it.
I was going to say, just, you know what to do with mine if they're not behaving. So
Got it.
She cometh, children. She cometh.
It's the beauty of having your best friend. See, and this is the community.
Yeah.
And when I moved here, I didn't know Sapphire. I didn't know we met through our youngest 2 at school because my redhead enchanted her son. So now we've built this community, and through her, I've met another friend who is also a single mother of 3, and we have each other's backs. Like if she needs to go out and do something, yeah, I'll watch the boys while you go, or I'll come hang out with them so it doesn't look like I'm babysitting, Or if I'm without a vehicle right now, it's, I have an appointment I have to go to. One of those 2 will give me their vehicle and help me out. And in return, I put gas in their car. I will pick up a few groceries. Is there something you need? And again, I expect nothing. It's a symbiotic relationship like we've been talking about. You do it out of the goodness of your heart and things come back to you. When you do nice things, people want to do nice things back.
Yeah, and it's so much better to have things in that kind of arrangement where it is coming out of the goodness of heart. And that's where government programs always fall short, because then it's very regimented. It's very legalistic. It takes all of the humanity out of it, which is why the more society goes in that direction, the more it tends to fail. But when humans just take care of each other, it always goes so much better. And even though if in our digital spaces, the fact that we can come together on places like Twitter, on podcasts like this. I mean, I just opened the Oak and Elder Witchery on Gilded. I'm sorry to everyone who's struggling with the RoboBlocks that Gilded makes you do that because they have some sort of partnership. You never have to think about it again after you sign up. It is fine. It will be okay. I promise. But it's all about, having this community where the people I encounter there, they have goodwill towards me. We all have good intentions towards each other. No one there is arriving with the intention of being hateful to me or yelling at me or trying to make me feel bad about any particular thing, which, we've got to carve out these places for ourselves in the digital and in the real world, because we're not going to find that in Twitter. And for a while yet, we're not going to find that in broader society. I think we're sowing seeds, and I think over time it will bear a lot of fruit. But we are in the seed planting generation. We're not in the manifestation generation of that.
I'm back.
Kids are alive.
You are back.
Kids are alive and well.
So you.
No one.
Excellent.
My husband's alive too.
So, what have we not really covered yet? Oh, well, that is good, because the children, I mean, they might have been like, if we get rid of him, we can do whatever we want.
Mutiny.
That was my concern, so I wanted to make sure everyone was good.
It would have been the ginger that did the mutiny. There's no 2 hands about that. That would have been mine.
Yeah.
Overthrow the oligarchy.
Hey,
that would have been
it's not their fault.
No.
Yeah, it's not their fault. They were born without a soul, and they have to collect other people's. It's just what nature did to them.
And as a witch of a mother and a witch of a ginger, I appreciate her collecting abilities.
Hey, I'm married a ginger, so it's useful.
Mostly for scaring others.
As for topics we haven't covered, I think we did a really good job covering most of them in a general conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we missed anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we. No, we didn't. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any additional points that you guys really wanted to hit on. And of course, Violence with Life has really been with us. So I also kind of wanted to open up the floor to her. If would you like to hear us comment on anything that is bothering you? Because clearly we have set aside time to be doing this. So if you would care to, I'm sure we could ramble on, or at least give kind of our first thoughts. Oh, that reminds me. Let me get while we're waiting to see if Violence is Life has anything for us. Yesterday, I was in conversation with one of the ladies at the Witchery, and it kind of came up about what are things that aren't discussed within the pagan realm enough that really need to be covered? And one of the things that she really hit on for me that I think does have relevance not only to us as a religious community in general, but also to how we can relate with the broader society is about not defining ourselves by what we are not or what we are in opposition to. And what she was getting about is us having more of an independent, affirmative, clear vision of who we are as pagans. And I wondered if her concern about how this needs to be emphasized more, if that is resonating with your own experiences and observations.
I see Jade's wheels turning there.
I'm trying to
Well,
think of how.
I'll give you a chance to think, because the reason why I bring it up in the context of our conversation is because I think that's also showing up in our politics and in all of the social movements. People are defining themselves in relation to what's not. They're not simply saying, I think X, Y, and Z. I like X, Y, and Z things. I want to create X, Y, and Z world. They're not talking about, their affirmative vision. They're just talking about, I'm opposed to this. I don't like that person. I think this is icky. And just the differences of energy in there. So
I think
I
when
just wondered.
Jade and I, when Jade was introducing me to a lot of the craft and helping me, I was fixated on identifying myself in some way. And one of the things that Jade said was, that's not necessary. You don't need to be a kitchen witch. You don't need to be a nature witch. You don't need to be an ocean sea witch. You don't need to be a Norse pagan. You don't need to be a Germanic pagan. You can just be Sapphire. You can just be you in your practice. And sometimes that's difficult when you're trying to find your community to fit into, because a lot of those communities do have labels. But for me, I think it was, especially with Jade giving me a lot of that confidence to not label myself. It's also integrated, obviously, into my political views, not being left or right, but informed. As a witch and as a pagan, I'm more about seeing the next generation water the seeds that we plant.
Yeah.
I didn't get cut out that time.
In order for that to happen. You did not. I mean, it's a miracle. Maybe you're winning over your federal agent. But I share that concern too, of making sure that the kids are, here to actually water those seeds and have the motivation to do so and know how to do so. And in order to do that, there's so much petty, silly stuff that we've got to get away from. There's so many, the kind of circles I've talked about. I'm sure you have found yourselves in the midst of them as well, about where they're focusing on everything, all these details, all of this. I researched that and I researched that, but they never get around to. And based on that, this is what I think it means. This is how it changed my life, and this is how I'm using that information to improve my. That they never seem to get around to that. Whereas I think with
There's
a
lot of
bit more.
This is why you're wrong.
Pragmatic.
This is what you're doing, but there's no, but hey, this is a suggestion that I have. And I mean, I've always tried to be I try not to correct people a whole lot, but I do try to be like, hey, this is something that I found works. This is something that I do. This is a practice of mine. If you have anything to add to it, please let me know. Because we all have a different path and a different journey, and no two paths are the same. Nobody's alike. So, I mean, we came into this very early on with you, Sapphire. I remember teaching you herbs and things like that. And there's substitutes for everything within the Wiccan,
I remember this,
whatever you want to call it, world. And sometimes there are people who refuse to acknowledge that. So what I've always been taught and what I've always known is, for example, like rosemary is a substitute for anything. It has so many different properties, so many different things about it. And I can't remember if it was you or somebody else ever that actually posted something about that and got a lot of backlash from another person within our community. It was, no, you can't do that. This is wrong. This is blah, 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 blah. There was no, this is why, this is my sources. This is what I would do if I was you. So there's a lot of, bashing, but again, there's no solution.
There's no
So
follow
you're
up.
just a part of the problem. And if you're not a part of the solution, then to me you are the problem. And that's something I tell my kids all the time. You know what? You can be a part of the problem. You can sit and whine and complain about what it is you want, what you don't have, or you can be a part of the problem and go, well, if I do this, then maybe mom will see that I did that and then you know what I mean? To put it on a more simplified level.
And by the way, rosemary is absolutely a universal substitute. And here's the thing: is that with something like that, we know that because people experimented with it and they got consistent results working with it in a variety of different intentions. And that's how that was established. Now, I mean, counter arguments, fine, but you're gonna have to come up with proof, dears.
Yeah, you're gonna have to back yourself up because I've got an army, so
yeah.
I've got spell work that I've done. I've got years and years, decades even at this point, of knowledge and information that I've gathered, that I have. And if you're going to come at me, then why?
Yeah.
Or at least you're not going to convince me. You're just yelling at me for no reason.
Yeah. And just the other thing is that I don't care about people's credentials. It's the quality of your argument. And if the quality of your argument doesn't really pass the smell test, it doesn't really matter to me what you claim as your qualifications, because it's not matching up with reality. And I'm sorry, reality outranks you. But Violence of Life, I liked this comment, and I thought we could kind of explore it a little bit. She says, I feel like I don't fit into a particular box. While we do have a lot of Norse pagan stuff, I also have ancient Egyptian, ancient Greek, Roman, and Celtic Druid stuff. And I feel like a lot of pagans, I say, American pagans, but really what I mean is, North American pagans, we do tend to fall into that. And I think there's a variety of reasons why. And I think that eventually we will emerge into kind of a distinct flavor of our own. But I also feel a lot of pushback whenever someone says, so can we look for similarities and maybe kind of build community around that? Sometimes I get a lot of flack for that. What do you guys think, just kind of in general and reactions? And I mean, take it anywhere. Take it absolutely anywhere.
We do tend to just pit ourselves against each other, Well, I'm Norse pagan, but I don't believe in the Roman gods. That's not. Why can't we stop and go, they're connected in different ways? Whether it's this god is the same as yours, or there's an actual connection. Because I know some goddesses started off as Greek or Roman and are now considered more Celtic. Hecate, I believe, is one of them. Hecate.
And then there's also there was Epona that was more so in kind of Gaulish Romanized France. And then you have her Welsh equivalent of Rhiannon, and I feel pretty satisfied we're dealing with the same lady there. And then also, in my dealings with other pagans, there's been numerous occasions where we were working with people from different pantheons, but it felt like, based upon messages we were getting and the fact that we were interacting at all, that those gods were in communication with each other.
Absolutely. They're definitely in my house. Between myself and my son being Norse pagan, my mom works with the Morrigan. My dad is a Druid. My husband is a Christian. We are a multi-faith household, and the community of the gods and goddesses that are in our house, they have to work together out of respect. My mom has a small spot on her altar for Loki, because she knows he's ever present. And when my mom's away on the weekends, she has a little glass on her altar that she keeps filled for the Morrigan. And I go in and make sure that's filled when she's away, and of course I honor that goddess while I'm standing there, because that's the respectful thing to do. And she honors my gods by making sure there's a little spot for him. And she never forgets Loki. There's always a piece of candy there for him, which I really appreciate. My oldest son has gone back and forth between Egyptian gods, being spiritual, being a philosopher, back to being spiritual, back to Egyptian gods. He's a whole mess of things right now. And wouldn't it be a damn shame if I pushed my agenda on him?
Yeah.
While he's confused. So he's really confused right now. He doesn't know which way he's going. So I'm going to push my agenda and push my ideals and push. So now, okay, he thinks he's Norse pagan. That's great. when he's 30 years old and he's undoing that trauma of me pushing my religion on him and my ideals, and is confused and finally on the path that he wants. How unfair is that? So
yeah, and that would totally poison any relationship he had with those gods, because it'd always be about, mom pushed me towards you, not, do I like you? Has your wisdom benefited me? The kid wouldn't be able to see past the bad experience.
So for me, I think if we're going to look at Norse pagan, and I'm just reading ancient Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Celtic, Druid, I think building a community around paganism in general and working, like, there is rituals you can do that would encompass all of that around a big table full of food and having conversations.
But now the agent interrupts her?
Oh my. Where did I leave off?
You were talking about rituals that actually encompass deities from multiple pantheons and that have, worked. So that's where you were.
We've done this, Jade. You set the table, you have a feast and a conversation. That in itself is a ritual. And that encompasses everybody's pantheons that sit around that table, that are laughing, drinking, eating, joking. And that is what it means. And we see those memes all the time. A Christian, a Muslim, a Jewish person, a pagan went to the bar. It's those types of jokes. And what happened? Conversation happened. Happiness happened. Celebration happened. It takes nothing to be a good person and have an open-minded conversation. We can do that. And Violence is Life, absolutely, there is room to explore all of those deities and enjoy all aspects of them.
Yeah, and I was also thinking with our holy days, we all want to celebrate the planting. We all want to celebrate the harvest. We all have Feast of the Dead and all these various other things. What harm does it do if, the next thing on the calendar is the fall equinox? But what harm would it do if we had a big, general pagan ritual, and some people came and they enacted the story of Hades and Persephone, and another told the tale of Mabon and Modron, and another talked about the balance of the light and the dark and all of the various symbolism for what it means. We could be involving radically different gods from different pantheons, but everything would be honored and everything would be relevant to the situation and the context. So I've never understood the argument for why we couldn't do that. It's not like someone saying, and now you must have a relationship with Persephone. No, I can appreciate what you did when you brought Persephone to Circle. That doesn't change my personal practice. It just means, I made you welcome. That's it. Why? But why is it hard? Why is it hard, girls? Why is it hard?
It shouldn't be hard.
I don't know, because that's what we do.
Well,
but we're also I don't want to say that Jade and I are in a closed practice. We just don't know a lot of other pagans around us. So we surround ourselves with the like-minded people, which makes having that type of ritual super easy. Not to mention that 90% of it is usually children. So because we have a lot of kids.
That helps. That really does help.
We have a lot of kids.
We have a lot of kids that are in and out of this house. I mean, on a busy day, between she's got 3, I got 2, that's 5, 6, 7, 8 on our other friend. I've got 2 nieces, 9, 10. Like, you're looking between 10 and 12 kids sometimes at one of our feasts or our rituals. The last one we had was one of our smaller ones. I don't understand why it's hard, but for us it tends to be easy because we just kind of stick to ourselves.
And I mean, at the end of any ritual that we do, we always say, is there anything anybody else would like to add?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that if anybody hasn't gotten a chance to say something, or if there is somebody, a deity that you feel hasn't been represented that should be, you're more than welcome to bring that up.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be
an offering on the table to say a blessing for them, or even just an acknowledgement.
Yeah. And that can come up very spontaneously. Even in my private rituals, I have it all planned out and I know what I'm doing and I'm going for. And then just suddenly it'll pop in my head if I need to say something to so-and-so. And I would imagine in bigger groups, it's even more likely to happen. Now, there's one last thing I want to toss at you gals before we close it up here. And it relates to one of the things you said at the very beginning, Jade, about how you wanted people to essentially find their common humanity and work towards common purpose and a restoration of basic decency. Lately, I have been going down the rabbit hole of human history and how they're finding ruins that are older and older and older, and how they're finding symbolism that is crossing continents, crossing cultures, crossing time periods, crossing pantheons and religions, and that seem to consistently represent similar things. And one of the current theories is that there may have been an older civilization that fell, and after the fall, people dispersed. They brought their ideas, and it influenced peoples and cultures today, and some of what we see that's in common is their enduring legacy. What do you think about that idea? Is that something we should be looking to as we're kind of finding our feet in the North American continent and modern paganism in general? Just what's your take?
Yeah, Jade, what's your take?
Ignorant to say that it's not possible. I mean, the older we get as a society, as a from the time that I don't, depending on where you consider time to have started. I'm going to throw that out there because different people believe different things. But in the modern day, I think it would be ignorant to think that we couldn't find new findings. We couldn't come across and say, well, we saw this marking on a cave in Ireland, but we also saw it somewhere in South America. Spirituality is a frequency, and you can either tune into it or you can't. And to think that there is an older civilization beyond what we know, or one out there that connects us all that we don't know about yet, is ignorant, in my opinion. I mean, you look at the pyramids in Egypt, and you look at the ruins and pyramids in modern day Mexico, so the Aztec ruins, they have a lot of similarities. They had to come from somewhere. So, I mean, I think, yes, I absolutely, I think there is. I think it's a total strong possibility.
I just wanted to kind of canvass your views, just because I feel like some of our brothers and sisters might be a little timid to lend credence to that, and they're afraid of essentially the same people who would yell at us for a variety of reasons would yell at them for suggesting such a that. So I'm hoping to inspire bravery today, that it's okay to consider these questions no matter what you conclude about them.
Well, it would be the same if we came across a new animal or species in the rainforest and been like, well, that's not possible. We've discovered all that. We know everything about it. No, we don't.
Those bones are a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the depths of the ocean. Oh, we found a new kind of fish. We found a new kind of shark. We found something that's been here for longer than humans or trees or anything else. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah. I know it's a big question, Sapphire, but I
think we would be very, we wouldn't be, I don't know the right word, arrogant maybe, to think that there isn't a possibility of that. I think, we look at the Vikings and how they traveled, especially. So you're going to find bits and pieces of Viking culture throughout the world. You're going to find bits and pieces of Native American culture throughout the world. I think we'd be blinded to think that that's not a possibility.
Yeah, and I like to think about that, just because, for one, it's very humbling. It reminds me personally of just how many question marks we have in the historical record. And, thankfully we have more tools than ever before and more interest than ever before to pursue them. But also, I kind of think that this might be the key to helping us kind of untie our own spiritual knots of it really is okay for us not to have all of the answers. It's okay for us to still be explorers. It's still okay for us to try something new. And it's still okay to say, I think the past is more complicated than what we were previously led to believe, because I just feel like we need to take away the condemnation feels too strong of a word, but judgment doesn't feel strong enough. But conformity to the established narrative. That's what I was looking for.
and take the pressure off people. Let people blab, let them get their thoughts out. You don't have to have the perfect speech. I didn't come into this live today with everything exactly prepped for what I was going to say. You're never going to have all the right words. You know, if you need to just be like, I have an idea, let me talk this out. Maybe it's crazy, maybe it's not. And you got to spew for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And that's one of the missions of this channel, this conversation, and honestly, the communities that we're all building here. It's just to say, you can come here, and we shan't be yelling at you today. And I hope people take that as a comfort. So we've been rattling away for 2 hours and 17 minutes. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we say goodbye to them and retreat back to the studio?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. Hopefully, we've given you something to think about, something to consider. And the takeaway is just be a little kinder.
Yep.
Do something nice for somebody.
Kindness
is about you.
Key. Just gonna say like Jade said, thank you to everybody that was on, everyone that takes a look at it later on. Thank you so much for supporting us. And kindness is key. Love one another and be kind.
Alrighty. Well, I've got both of your Twitter handles in the description box below. So, as you say, people have been causing you to lose followers because of their own preconceptions. Maybe someone today can help make up that difference for you. And of course, everyone, and especially you guys, are very much invited to the Oak and Elder Witchery at any time to come and hang out, enjoy yourselves. It's a part digital pagan coffee shop where people hang out, and it is part essentially the assembling of a pagan library with expressions of people's own personal work, links to article blogs, video links, memes, whatever people want to bring to a subject. I want to help us, encourage us to bring all these things together so we can all learn, and also so when newcomers find their way to us, they at least have a place to start. And that's always the hardest part of everything, finding that place to start.
Kudos and big thank you to you, Brigantia, for putting all this together and
yes,
creating spaces like this.
Oh,
safe spaces
amazing.
To be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
and maybe my federal agent will follow us on Twitter.
Oh, let's see. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll win over that agent in the end. But it's absolutely been my pleasure to host you guys, and I absolutely look forward to future talks. It's so easy to talk to both of you. The only thing that really got in the way was internet connection and obnoxious government officials. So I feel sure that in future we'll be able to have even more fun with this as well. I feel like we've got tons to talk about still.
We do,
but we're going to let the audience go. I'll end the stream, but we'll still be in studio, so I can, just kind of, we can unwind for a second. But thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for especially Violence in Life, who was with us in the chat for, I think, since the beginning. So, I mean, what a trooper. Thank you for everyone who popped in. Thank you for everyone who was watching. Again, you've got our socials in the description box, so we hope to hear from you guys soon. And, well, see you. Bye later, world.